So I'm going to speak for a few minutes, and by all means, I'm quite happy to entertain questions as I go along. But my role as an art consultant is really to act as an intermediary between you and my clients. And so my job is to educate my clients primarily about the joys of buying original art. That's why people pay me to do what they do. But it is an education process, and it's a strong education process because a lot of people like art, but they either don't have the confidence to buy what they think is good. They need a professional to tell them what is good. Or they are looking for something that perhaps they can't find. In the case of higher end clients, they are a bit more sophisticated and they will have me searching a little bit further for their art needs. But the biggest challenge is to educate clients on purchasing original art. And so I wanted to really talk about, in my experience, what I have discovered over the last 12 years. And that is about the different kinds of artists that I encounter. And over time, I have come to appreciate that there's probably 4 different kinds of artists that I have worked with. The first type of artist is that they are people pleasers. So they are trying to paint for the market. They are trying to figure out what sells, what they should paint for in order to make an art sale. And in my experience, this is not the correct way to go about painting and finding the joy in painting. It's just about being yourself and figuring out what pleases you to paint and not what you think will try and sell, because there is no figuring out what will sell. And every client is different and every artist is different. And so I think that those artists that are trying to chase the market, I don't think that that's the right approach. The other artists that I encounter are people called disciples. So those artists are constantly looking to follow who they think is successful. And again, you're never going to be like another artist. You are who you are. And so you cannot be somebody that you're not. So I think you have to get it in your head that you're not going to be a disciple of anyone. That being said, you can certainly be inspired and motivated by other artists and what you see. But some people get stuck and they can never really think beyond copying, if you put it that way, or pretty close to copying anyway, another artist. The next group is the perpetual student. And so there are artists that will take course after course after course and never really feel satisfied in finding their own voice. And this can be a problem in that they just never discover their style. They never discover their voice and really what they're trying to be. So that is a problem that I have encountered with many artists. And the last group is that most artists are their own worst critics. And so they continually strive for perfection in their work, which of course is unattainable. And it's never really good enough. And I think there are a lot of artists that understandably need the confidence to go forward in the market when they're amongst so much competition. So again, this, in my experience, this has been the 4 types of artists. Some of you may be a little bit of both, or you may think that I'm completely off the mark, but I'm not an artist. But I have dealt with hundreds of artists over the course of my career. And there are some pretty common themes in working with artists. And I applaud all of you, quite frankly, because I know of no other profession where you're putting yourself out there against the world for everybody to judge and see and appreciate. And I think you have to have pretty thick skin to be able to feel rejection as an artist, and every artist feels that. And whether you're at a show or you're a juried show or you're in a gallery or whatever, and people walk by and don't appreciate your work. I've said this a million times to artists that they need to really develop a tough skin so that they can take criticism generously and know that not everybody is going to like your work, and nor are you going to be the next Picasso. That's just not the way the game works. And so that's kind of how I feel about that. I can't say enough right at the moment about being proactive and getting out there. I know the competition is tremendous. And I know with social media today, it's daunting. But the most successful artists that I have worked with have really been committed to driving their artwork forward. And that means that they are using social media effectively. And by that, I mean that, you know, you're not just throwing stuff up on social media without it being interesting, engaging, novel, and that you're doing a top job every time you put yourself out there. Because your reputation in the art world is everything. And you never want to be less than professional with what you're doing. As I said, the competition is tremendous. And so I think once you find your niche and you find your voice and you figure out what you think you're good at, then you're going to market yourself that way and put yourself out there and take criticism and keep moving along and experimenting until you find your stride. And you will know when you find your stride. There are lots of artists that say to me, well, I don't want to be buttonholed into any genre in particular. I like to experiment. I like to paint florals one day and landscapes the next day and whatever. That's fine. But you will notice that a lot of successful artists become very branded in what they do, and that brings them success. So I have no idea amongst your group how many of you are professionals, how many of you are actually making your living, selling your artwork, whether you're just doing artwork for the love of it. That I don't know. But if you want to become a recognized professional artist, you need to find your brand and you need to begin to build your brand in order for people to recognize your work. So when I go to an art show, I can probably at this point begin to pick out many artists according to their style. And I think that's important to figure out what your style is and then begin to perfect it. And I don't want to say perfect, but I mean to become more professional about what you're doing. So the types of buyers that are out there, I said that you shouldn't paint for the market, and you shouldn't. But there are two different kinds of buyers that you will encounter, whether it's in the virtual world now or whether it's in person. And the first type of buyer that you're going to encounter is a bargain seeker. And so that person will just want to buy a piece of art in the most inexpensive way possible. So they're not really looking for quality or something that really motivates them or moves their soul. They're very bottom line driven. And so they will compromise on what they really want for the sake of a couple of $100s. So I have encountered many different people, again, throughout my journey. And there are some people that a couple of $100 means everything to them. And so they would forego buying what they really like if another painting was $200 or $300 cheaper. The other type of person you will encounter are what I call deal seekers. And these people want to have your piece, but they want to haggle with you. And they want to, it's a game. It's like going to, a flea market or anywhere where, some people like to engage in the dance. Well, if the painting is $600, I'll offer you 400. And then you say, no, it's not, I'm not going to do that. And you have to recognize the difference between the two types of people and understand what your art buyers really are asking from you. And that means that you have to spend time with them. So if they're interested, and let's just say they engage in some conversation with you, then you have to determine what they're really asking you for. Are they asking you for a bargain price, or do they just want to play with you and see if they can shave off, even if it's $50? Some people will want to do that. So just be forewarned that there are different types of buyers that are out there, and you need to know the difference in order to know who you're speaking with. So everybody knows that everything is, at least a lot of things are online right now. And in fact, I was looking at a survey recently where it said that 87% of gallery sales are online. There is some, I don't know where, this is probably in the States, perhaps a little bit in Canada. There is some gallery sales going on, but predominantly it is virtual sales. And in fact, in some of the larger galleries, it is pure virtual sales. So a lot of galleries are now doing both, and but they also recognize that there are, again, they're doing analytics on their clientele and determining how art is getting sold. And for the younger demographic, between 18 and say 40 or 45, those people have no trouble whatsoever in buying art online. And in fact, they prefer to do that. So if you're painting for the market, you need to make sure that your virtual presence is superb, and you will attract a younger clientele if that's what you want. I'm from the old school, so I do appreciate looking at art in the flesh, but the virtual world isn't going away anytime soon, and we all know that. So we need to figure out how best we can get on board with the virtual market. Framing. This is a question that I get asked time and time again, and we can certainly discuss it in a few moments. But a lot of artists are confused about whether they should frame their work and how they deal with that. So my job as an art consultant is to defer to the artist. So if the artist feels that their work needs framing, then I would say that that's what should happen. And you should not frame your work inexpensively if you want to command a good price for your artwork. So I've juried shows where artists will do a fabulous job, a fabulous painting, And then they will scout around and they will find a cheap frame at Value Village or Goodwill, or they'll go to Michael's or whatever, and frame something, which totally detracts from the beauty of the piece. So I realize that framing is expensive, but I'm going to talk about pricing in a minute. And what you can think about is, of course, building the price of your framing into your art prices so that you feel compensated accordingly. But again, I'm going back to that premise where you're putting your best foot forward. And if you feel that you need to compromise on framing, I would say don't frame it as opposed to framing it inexpensively. So that's just the voice of experience. And again, I've seen lots of crazy stuff out there. And oftentimes clients may want to frame themselves. And so I will help the client to go through that process. I have a number of wholesale framers that I'm able to work with and assist my clients that way. But the bottom line is, please do a good job. If you're going to frame, make sure that you do a good job and you can price that into your prices accordingly. So let's talk about pricing for a minute. So pricing is always a question that I get asked every time I am working with an artist. And what I find is that artists price their work emotionally. So they price their work either too low because they don't have confidence that they're going to be able to command a fair price for their work, or they're going to overprice their work, and they have not done their homework, and they do not recognize where they fit into the mix and what their competition is. So those are two vulnerable areas that artists fall into, because they do tend to get quite emotional about pricing their work. And they'll come to me and say, well, you know, I spent X number of hours on this painting and it should be priced at X. And I say, the client, the buyer, doesn't care how many hours you spent on a painting. They just want to, they want it to be pleasing, and that's what they want to buy. They could care less if you spent 50 hours on a painting. It doesn't matter to them. I know you guys get asked that question, especially if the artwork is priced at a higher end, where people will say to you, how long did it take you to paint that? And a good question and a good response to come back to with that question is, it's taken me a lifetime to paint this. Because in fact, what you've done is you've put in a lot of hard work and effort and years of experience and experimentation to get good at your craft. So I know artists that I've worked with that can paint a painting in 20 minutes and they get great money for their pieces. And it's irrelevant. It really is irrelevant as to the amount of time that you've spent on it. It's more important to price your work fairly and reasonably. And so that means that you go and you begin to understand, if you've been an artist for 2 years, you're not going to be able to garner the same price that an artist gets if they've been painting for 15 years. It's just not the way it works. And so again, be sensitive to the fact that you need to do your homework, know what your competition is, and begin to recognize where you fit in the pecking order in the world of art. And some artists will say to me, how often can I raise my prices? And I will say, if you're having a great year, you can probably think about raising your prices by 10% if you're having a good year. If you're not having a good year, do not increase your prices. But on the flip side, do not get into sales mode, into selling your work too inexpensively. You will regret that you do that, because the market will turn up again. The market will return. And then you have to go back into that climb again of raising your prices to a fair market value. So that's how I feel about pricing. I don't know how you price your work. We can have a discussion about it when I'm finished. But most of you will know the formula where you take the length times the width, and you come up with a number of square inches on the face of the canvas. And then you figure out per square inch what price you're going to assign per square inch. So if it's $1.50 a square inch, if it's $2 a square inch, if it's $6 a square inch, it doesn't matter. What will happen is, if you price each work that way, you will end up being consistent with your body of work. And so it doesn't matter whether it's oil or acrylic or pastel or whatever it is. If you begin to price your artwork consistently, you won't have art consultants asking you why you're pricing your work the way you do. And you won't have your buyers raising an eyebrow when they see some of your bigger pieces are priced very high and your smaller pieces are priced very low. So that's a good rule of thumb, is to get used to pricing your work consistently. How are we doing, Marie? We okay for time?
We're okay for time, sure. Yeah, it's valuable information. It's like almost halfway, so.
Okay. I realize that this is a sensitive time now for artists, and I sense a level of desperation in certain situations, and I do not want artists to devalue their work. Your work is what it's worth, and so don't be afraid to price your work fairly according to what you think is reasonable. And don't get into sales and giveaways, because what I think that looks like is that you are lacking confidence with your work. And I know I see it all the time. I'm not talking about if you have a great client and they buy a beautiful piece of art from you, that you want to give them a little extra little piece to go along as a special gift. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, I see it all the time now on the internet where artists are, free or whatever. I personally raise my eyebrows when I see stuff like that, because I do think that there is a little bit of an era of desperation with the artists. So you're good at what you do, be confident in what you do, and the rest will follow. And I think that I think the hardest thing for a lot of artists to figure out is where they're going and what they're good at and what they want to do. What's your voice? Where's your stride? What lane are you going to go into in order to perfect your craft? And as I said, you'll know it. When you find it, you will know it. Your buyers will tell you that, and you will be rewarded with increasing sales because you're doing a competent job. I guess we can talk a little bit about social media. I hadn't planned on doing that, but we can. There's a busy world going out there with social media. And the first thing I'd like to talk about is for artists to make sure that they have an up-to-date website. So in order to do that, you may need to hire somebody professionally to do it. And it doesn't mean that you have to spend $5,000 to do it. But your first impression is going to be off of your website. That's the first thing that people are going to look at when they're looking for your work and wanting to know a little bit more about you. So make sure you do a good job with that, and make sure that your clients can navigate your website effectively. Don't make them hunt for anything. They want to be able to look and see it's clear, it's logical. The information that you're giving them is the information that they want to know. I personally don't prices on anything that I put on the internet or on Instagram or Facebook. I never post prices. I know that other people do, and I guess it's a personal preference. I would much prefer to have a client call me or to speak with me, and I can have, it's not that I'm going to change the prices depending on who the client is. But I want to engage in a conversation before I would publicly put prices on the internet. So websites are important, they're very important, and don't cheap out on that if you want to have a professional face. I would strongly encourage you to do that. Likewise, social media. So we've all seen the countless reels now. Artists they're getting more and more elaborate all the time. My gosh, some of them look like they can win an Oscar or something. They're becoming so fancy, and music and bells and whistles and very elaborate. And that's fine, but for the average artist that's trying to figure out what they're going to do, I would much rather an artist do a good job at doing 1 or 2 reels, perhaps a week, perhaps not, but doing some good reels and garnering people's attention versus throwing things out there day after day and not getting any traction. And you're going to be very frustrated because you're not getting the attraction and attention that you think that you deserve. So be aware of what you're posting, whether it's on Instagram, and Instagram is, I forget how many billions of people are on Instagram every day. And the demographic, of course, with Instagram, there are many success stories from artists that have got a lot of traction off of Instagram, that have garnered rocket-like attention in the art world off of Instagram. So I'm saying use it effectively. And again, figure out your brand on what you're doing and what you want the world to understand about the artwork that you are doing. But it is unavoidable. And we know that Facebook is a little older demographic. But that being said, there's lots of people that are still looking at Facebook regularly. So I'm going to stop talking for a little bit because I think that probably you will have some questions that you would like to ask me, and I'll do my best to help you.
That's great. Thanks, Joanne. If you have a question, put up your hand, or there is a reaction tab. Connie?
Yeah, Joanne, when you talked about your brand and how you want that to get across, can you elaborate a bit on what you think are some of the most important pieces of that?
I think that it's difficult to build your brand, quite frankly. And one of the things that I did when I was trying to understand how to go about doing that was I took a course. There are many, many courses that you'll see scrolling across Instagram more often than not. But I did take a course, a quick course. It was free. You don't have to spend a lot of money. And one of the things that she talked about was trying to connect with people emotionally.
Yeah.
And so what if you can take the time to write down perhaps 5 emotions that you feel best describe your work. And people will connect with you on an emotional level by doing that. So for example, if it's joy, if you feel that your work brings joy, then if you begin to post your Instagram or your Facebook around the words that the emotions that joy can bring, and you begin to be consistent with your message about joy. I have it written down here somewhere, the words that I used. I hope I can find them for you.
Okay, that's very helpful to hear this.
Mhm.
And look from the point of view of your customers and looking at your work. You know your work and what you want to say, but your customer doesn't know that. So what is your customer looking at or getting? What vibe is your customer getting off of your paintings? So if you want it to be joy that you're trying to convey, then you have to describe the joy within yourself of the message that you're trying to get across. So, and the other thing is on Instagram, well, Facebook too, but on Instagram, you know, you have a very short amount of time to capture the reader's attention. So if you just post, this is a fabulous tree that I painted at Port Perry last week.
Yeah.
Not very interesting. Because, you know, but if you said, this beautiful tree caught my imagination because the branches looked like Mother Earth enveloping me or something, and you can get pretty creative with it. You're going to capture the reader's attention, and they're going to stick with you for a few minutes, and they want to read more, because I think there's only like maybe a line and the half a line, and then it goes to more.
Right.
So you have to be captivating in those initial sentence or sentence and a half in order for the reader or for the person that's viewing it to want to learn more about what you're talking about. And there are keywords. So I would encourage you to take a free course on branding on Instagram. I found it immensely helpful. I think it was a half hour, and it was the best half hour that I ever spent.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other question before I jump in?
I have several. Sherry over here.
Yes.
Hi, Sherry.
Hi. Joanne, thank you for being here. This has been very informative. I wanted to find out, I have several questions. How do you get your clients, first of all? How do they come to you?
Well, you build client relationships over a long period of time. And so the way that I was fortunate years ago, I used to host what I called salon evenings. So this was a crazy idea that I had from my art history days, where I decided instead of clients going to an art gallery, I was going to bring art to the client. And so what I did was I decided to handpick artists primarily from Guelph in the beginning. And I had a number of friends that I knew liked art. And so I began to host evenings in beautiful homes across the city. And there was an ulterior motive to my madness, in that some of the homes that were offered to me were very nice homes. And I knew that the ladies that were going to come to the evening wanted to see what the inside of that house looked like.
I love it.
And so I began to have small groups, not large groups. I began to invite 6 to 8 people, women primarily, but not all the time. It got more interesting as time went on. But it would be a very intimate evening where the artist would be present, and I would have maybe, 8 or 10 pieces from the artist, or I might have 2 artists. And the evening was very casual. but it was nice. And I had good food and I had good wine, and we talked about art, and it was a lovely evening, and it was very successful. And from that point on, it began to become a thing, because and first of all, I didn't invite, I thought I was going to invite, first of all, people that liked art. So there's lots of people that will come to a lovely evening and drink good wine and have good food and look at art and never spend a dime. That wasn't my intention. My intention was to purposefully try and select people who I knew loved art. And I went on to have a fabulous time doing this for years, where I would host these evenings, and it got to be bigger and bigger and bigger. And I ended up having 100 people come out to my evenings. And, at one point I couldn't keep up, because it would be the feeding frenzy of bringing in great art. And I was very selective in the artists that I was bringing in. First of all, I wanted to have confidence in the artist and their work, and I wanted it to be interesting, and I wanted it to be affordable. But again, I built my brand and my reputation on never doing anything less than first class. And that's how I was able to go forward and build my name in the business. And that catapulted into great things. I mean, in the area now, in Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, Guelph, Elora, Fergus. I mean, you mentioned the word art, and Joanne Poluch is a name that people think about. But it takes time to develop relationships with people. And I think in many ways that Instagram is a good place to start, because on Instagram, you can engage in conversation with somebody. So if somebody comments on your work, a non-artist, if someone comments on your work and says, "Oh, I love that, that's beautiful," you can engage in a conversation and say, "Oh, I'm so glad you like my work. Are you an art lover?" And so on and so on. And if you can begin to nurture a relationship with people, that's how it gets started. And my business has been built on, I'm not going to tell you for 1 minute that it hasn't been a lot of hard work and learning by mistakes, and working my heart out 7 days a week sometimes to build my brand. But it has paid off now. And I've never pushed a sale on anybody. I would never do that. That's not my style. I would rather not sell and keep my integrity and my relationship intact, rather than push a sale on somebody. I know that there are art consultants and gallery owners who don't share my philosophy, but it's worked for me. So that's what I do.
Thank you. Are you currently looking for new artists? How does an artist get in front of you, and how are you remunerated?
So I take a 35% commission if I make a sale. And I am not currently taking on artists at the moment. I have probably had a core of about 12 to 15 artists that I have under my belt. And they are higher end artists. And that's my target market. So when you try and figure out your market, I've spun around for a long time in selling a lot of art at a whole bunch of different price points. And I work just as hard to sell a $500 piece of art as I do to sell a $5,000 piece of art. It's the same amount of energy that I put into it. So unfortunately, I've gotten to the point where I want to do the best for the artists that I currently have in my portfolio. And it hasn't been easy right now. I mean, the last 12 months have been horrendously challenging and difficult. I've lost some major clients who, for whatever reason, whether it's financial or otherwise, I have not regained yet. So it's a really challenging market right now. And as I said, I would much prefer to do my best for the 12 artists. I have some artists out of the country right now that I'm working with. And that in and of itself is a whole other set of challenges. But yeah, I'm not taking on any new clients or artists at this time.
Joanne, if in the future you're looking for any additional artists, would you keep us as a group in mind?
Well, what I'd really like to do is when we get beyond all of this, is that I would like to come down and see a lot of your work. I mean, I know some of you, I don't know all of you, but there's a lot of great things that are going on out there that I just, am not aware of everything all of the time. So thank you kindly for the invitation. Of course, I would love to come down, or if you have group shows, I don't know whether you have juried shows, but I would be happy to participate and do what I can to get to know all of you better.
And one
That
last
would be
question.
great.
Do you represent any art form other than painting?
I do not.
Laura had a question. Do you still have a question, Laura?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
It's about pricing, and I price exactly as you had stated previously. However, I have had the occasional piece for various reasons that I have ended up doubling in price. And the reason for that is usually they're tied with a famous person or a well-known person, or the situation is just simply so unique that there's no other artist that has been able to replicate that situation and the reason for the painting. Do you find is it a rationalization or my reasoning behind doing that? I found success with it, but I'm just curious what your thoughts may be on those really unique one-off situations as an artist that you come by.
I think that's a tough one, Laura, because I understand where you're coming from. But I would say if you're consistently doubling your prices and getting away with it, good for you. I think what you're telling me is that you've had a really special painting that you've spent a lot of time on, and I'm not really sure what you're telling me about somebody famous that you're emulating. Can you tell me a
Well,
little
I'm
bit
not
more?
emulating. I've done a couple of pieces. The most recent one was for a jazz singer, Mississauga-based jazz singer. And long story short, she approached myself and 9 other female artists to listen to her debut album, select a song, and then create a piece of art based on that song. I ended up, unbeknownst to myself, selecting the title track. Well, as it turns out, that title track and the artwork is traveling the world through the Toronto Jazz Festival, Montreal, Tokyo Jazz Festivals, that sort of thing. She's also an actor. She's in the process of making a movie. So she's very well known. So this piece was actually done for her album. And in essence, what it is as the artist, we get the PR, we get to tag on to her fame and celebrity. And but it was a really such a unique opportunity that and I was just wondering what your thoughts were. And I've had similar situations with other pieces of art where they've been tied to very well-known people or or have you. So I just thought in those particular cases, because they are truly unique.
I would say if you can get away with it, go for it.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the chances of you having that same opportunity, are they good, or do you think it was a one-off?
Down the road, I think there's room for a lot more.
Well, then maybe that's the standard. You do have a benchmark now established.
Yep.
You obviously know what the market can bear.
Yep.
Was it a self-portrait of this person?
It wasn't a self-portrait, it's something I created just based on listening to her song.
And
I
how do you
created
think you could get further traction over that as you go forward?
As I go forward, well, the medium is Chinese brush painting, and
Interesting.
and I sell a lot in China. I have a bigger following in China than I do here, and I'm connected with all of these different Chinese groups throughout Europe, Asia, of course, South America, North America. So it's picking up a lot of traction that way. Plus, it's a combination of Chinese and Japanese styles.
Well, congratulations, because that's a great market.
Yeah.
I do know of artists that can sell their work for 6 times the price in Asia than they can in Canada.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm working on.
So go for it. Best of luck with that.
Okay.
Marcelo, you have a question? Can't hear you.
Turn your sound down.
I think he's trying.
You unmute?
Oh,
There you
there
go.
you go. No?
He had it there.
Yeah, I thought he did. He has a small gallery and a framing business locally,
Awesome.
so I'm sure he has a question.
Marcelo, type the question in your chat.
He's still on mute on my screen.
Right, but you can hear me. Type the question in the chat.
Oh, just a minute. What's he doing here? No, can't hear you. Okay, okay. Any other questions? Don't see anyone. I have oh, Brenda, go ahead.
You were talking about good reels earlier. What's a reel?
Well, I'm sure there are many people in your group that know exactly what a reel is. So on Instagram, a reel is a short live video of an artist painting, an artist talking, an artist promoting themselves. So it is on Instagram, and there are a couple of different things on Instagram. There are stories, which you can put up for 24 hours only, but so they are on your feed and then they're gone. And a reel, again, it's like a little mini video, and they're extremely popular. Extremely, and they're getting fancier and fancier all the time. I don't know, can someone else comment on if they've done a reel or not?
Hi, sorry, I recently started doing time lapses of me painting on my phone, and I've been posting them on Instagram, and I've had awesome feedback. I only started it about a month ago, and the response is great. Like I got 2 commissions from it, and everybody's like, oh, we want to see more of it. We want to see more of you paint it. And they're like, how does she do this? And how does, so it was a really good response, and something that I'm just new at trying.
Time lapse is great too, because that allows people to see the start and finish of the piece. So that's another good one as well. But good for you. Keep going.
If I put a picture
you.
of my work online, I find that I'll get maybe 50 people that will, like, comment, but if I put a video on IGTV or whatever, I'll get 200 or 300 people that will respond to it. So it's quite a big difference. So I try to do a video pretty regularly.
Good for
Yeah.
you.
I have done an IGTV on how I go about doing a watercolor, how I lay out my colors and stuff like that. And I've got that on my Instagram. That stays there forever, but I've never done like videos, these reels.
Well, the one thing I can say is you and 5 million other people are doing reels. So just make sure if you're going to do one that you are prepared and that because remember what I said, you're putting your best foot forward because the competition is intense. So you're not just going to be unprepared to speak when the microphone is on. Be prepared, know what you're going to talk about, know what you're going to do, know what you want to accomplish. And that way you will gain traction if it's interesting to the viewer.
Thank you very much, Joanne. This stuff's been absolutely amazing. Amazing.
Good.
Can you guys hear
information.
me yet? Can you
I
guys
did
hear me?
use
Oh, Marcelo
There's
speaks.
Marcello.
Hi, I'm sorry. This is my old computer, so I'm not used to using this older computer. Thank you very much, Joanne, for all the information.
My pleasure.
I have myself opened up last year, just before the pandemic. We opened up a small gallery right beside our framing store. And I am myself an artist, which haven't had that much time to actually produce a lot of work. But starting off the gallery space, it's been a bit of a challenge with the pandemic. You did answer my question a little bit, how you were doing, selling art at this time and what the challenges were a little bit. But as a new gallery space, I was just wondering if you had any kind of advice on as to how to go forward as a new place, and also if just putting it out there in the future, if you do, with Marie and I, we always have a good relationship, and I do all the graphic design for the flyers and stuff. So I always like to offer the space now for if you guys always wanted to get together at the gallery space, so that it'd be in one spot to just to show all the work to yourself, anyways, and we can have a little chit chat there, a little bit more formally or informally, as you might want to say. But I just wanted to see if you had any advice for a new gallery and how to actually cultivate a following of buyers, because as you can see, there's lots of great artists on even just on this group here. But I think it's a bit of a challenge just to find buyers that are not just there to buy or just to drink cheese or eat cheese and drink wine for free, right? So that's
Well,
what it's like.
as I did mention, first of all, congratulations for you for having the courage to follow what I assume is a dream of becoming a gallery owner. You're going to have to do your homework big time. And there's plenty of information out there in terms of understanding your clientele, who you're trying to target, what kind of art you're going to try and showcase. Are you going to hit the low end of the market? Are you going to hit the high end of the market? What's going to be your target audience? And understanding that the virtual world is not going away. And so therefore you being armed with that knowledge, the days of us having very lovely art openings once a month may return, but I don't think it's going to be return for a while yet. And so you are left with the challenge of trying to figure out how to put your gallery forward virtually. And as I said, I think you have to do your homework well, first of all, you have to figure out what kind of gallery you want to have and what kind of audience you want to attract. And then you need to understand how I would be very I would be very sensitive to being selective in the kind of artists that you're going to put into your gallery. You can be selective because there's lots of artists out there and there's lots of great artists out there. But be selective, as I am right at the moment in carrying the current roster of artists that I'm representing. It doesn't take long for you to make a goof and lose some clientele. So there's lots of information opportunities. I can send you some of them. I follow the market fairly faithfully, and I do see what galleries are doing. And it's no secret that galleries are having a tremendous challenge. Even the well-established galleries in Toronto, for example, they're really being challenged right now, of course, with lockdown and job loss. So you have to figure out what your target audience is, who you want to attract, and just make sure that you pick strong artists that you feel best represent the brand that you want to put forward in your gallery.
Excellent. Thank you. Because right now,
Jill, can
our,
I say one thing? I
Yes.
follow a number of galleries, and Butter Gallery, Jonathan's Gallery, Petroff Gallery, a bunch of those guys do a live session once a week, and you can see who their clients are and who those gallery owners are, because each of them have their own flavor. What some of them swear, they laugh, they are goofy, they know who their clients are, they know what they're selling. Others are very formal and do a big introduction on a new artist, or talk about how they frame or archival, or they interview, different artists, but they all have their own flavor, and they all do a really good job of saying, this is who I am as a gallery, this is who I am as a person, and this is who the people are that I represent. And if you follow them, if you're wondering where you fit in, start following some of those galleries and listening to their live feeds, because it will really help you.
excellent.
That's great advice. Great advice. Because there is no gallery owner that isn't working extremely hard nowadays. I mean, Butter Gallery happens to be they're in a section, they're in Collingwood, where there's a lot of Toronto people that are going up there with lots of disposable income. So they happen to be at the right place at the right time. Those two girls weren't always on top of their game. They have, but they have worked hard, and they carry an extremely steady roster of artists, and people know that they're being carried there. I'm sure that everybody saw the interview on the Zoom call, where Butter Gallery capitalized on a Zoom art. And when somebody is having a Zoom call, people are now looking at the art that is behind them.
Yeah.
And they got great press all across Canada for that. But it is no secret that galleries are struggling, and they are working overtime to try and figure things out. That's
Yeah,
just
I've been a little
truth.
bit fortunate because I also do the custom picture framing. So that's where we've been actually shining a little bit, because you're right. People have been buying artwork for their Zoom calls, and they're at home and they're bored and they want to get their artwork up, and so that's the only saving grace that's kind of been carrying the new gallery space. So that's the only thing that's keeping us really afloat. But this is excellent suggestions that I've gotten so far. So
Do your homework. Do your homework. There's
yeah,
plenty of information out there for you.
I think it's almost information overload, and it's like you gotta. I've been doing a lot of work, by the time you figure this out, things have already changed sometimes, right? So, and with
That's true.
this pandemic, it's one level just to learn about operating gallery. Another level is to how to market it, and then another level is actually invite people and get those kind of clientels. And it's a bit of a challenge, but luckily we've been around for almost 11 years. So
Good for you.
yeah,
Congratulations.
so
You'll make it.
yeah,
You'll
so
make it.
it's paying the bill so far. So
Good.
Yeah.
That's
But again,
important.
yeah, what's important for my wife, she's very happy about that.
I just want to thank you so much, Joanne. That's like so much information. And yet I know there's other questions. And maybe sometime after we've had a chance to digest everything that's come out tonight, we could meet up again.
Well, there were things I was going to get into and talk about, and I didn't know how much time we had, but
Yeah,
there are lots of topics that we can talk about. So by all means, and if people individually want to reach out, you can find me under Remark Art Consulting. I've got a great website, which I've worked hard at doing. And it would be my pleasure if people have personal questions that they would like to talk about. I'd be more than happy to discuss.
thank you. Thank you. That's very generous. Yeah, we
Thank
usually
you.
just run for an hour and it's a little after 8. So if anyone wants to
Thank you.
stay and chat, that's fine. I'll leave it open for a bit, but you may have your plans and are ready to move on to something else this evening.